Hello, and thanks for listening to your SCAMLE's exclusive podcast, ExplorED. On these episodes, you will enjoy exclusive interviews with some names you recognize and some people you'll be meeting for the first time. In each of our episodes, we will ask you to think and grow and reflect as a professional educator. If you aren't yet a member of SCAMLE, we encourage you to join today. More information can be found at www.scamle.org. There, find out more information about membership, conferences, and professional development opportunities. And don't forget to join us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. My name is Sarah Evanson Atkinson, and I serve as the Professional Development Director for your SCAMLE. I am an educator of 21 years and a past SCAMLE president as well.
This episode of the ExplorED podcast features Mrs. Melissa Royalty, the Director of Behavioral Health for Kershaw County Schools. If you know Melissa, you know. Melissa is one of those people who you feel like you've known forever. She's the consummate professional with a heart for kiddos, the knowledge to do what's right for others, and a calming spirit to bring each of us down a notch or two. We discussed de-escalation strategies as well as the specific components of SEL during our time together, and in fact, we lost track of time. We escalate because of emotion, but using de-escalation strategies with our students in our classrooms can help us to lead a more peaceful and productive educational existence. If, like me, you find yourself needing a little more Melissa Royalty after listening to this episode of ExplorED, be sure to check out the recording of Thursday Thoughts, where we hosted Melissa as our guest for the hour. She joined us from a hotel room during an important conference, but her impactful message was nothing less than remarkable. We are here with Mrs. Melissa Royalty, the Director of Behavioral Health for Kershaw County. Welcome aboard.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. And my name is Melissa. I am the Director for Behavioral Health for the Kershaw County School District, but my background is as an elementary and middle school teacher, as well as I've been a school counselor for elementary, middle school, assistant principal for elementary and middle school, and I was a principal for an elementary school for 8 years.
Well, we're happy you're with us today. So can I just say that, after the conference happened, feedback on your session about de-escalation strategies was outrageously positive. And I mean, there was standing room only in the room, and the feedback was really, really positive, and people wanted more of that. 45 minutes was not enough. And so I do want you to talk about some of the strategies that are the go-to strategies for de-escalation. But before we get into that, I'm wondering this. What's different today that, in our schools? What is different in our world right now where this is such a vital piece of information?
I've been mulling over that for quite some time, and being in education for the last 33 years, I think I've seen, the trends and the changes. But I do believe that our children are becoming more and more disconnected socially and humanistically because we are using our computers and they're doing lots of screen time, and they're not getting the same opportunities to engage with each other socially. And I'll also say, when I first started teaching in 1989, which was a long time ago, probably before you were even born, Sarah.
No, not true. Really okay, so I was 10. I was 10 when you started teaching. There it is. I was 10.
Okay, but 1989, when I first started teaching, I really did think that I was the sage on the stage. Mm-hmm. I held all the information, but nowadays, our kids, especially in the middle school ages, they all have the world at their fingertips because they all have a cell phone in their pocket. So I think as we are becoming more and more connected through the computer and through technology, I think we're becoming less connected in a humanistic state.
That's interesting. I just think that's so ironic, is that, and I'm even seeing it manifest even at my school. Like, for example, we just did our first set of testing, And I can't tell you, I had teachers running into the hallway to hand in their test materials so the kids could have access to their Chromebooks so that they could get back on track and it was like, they were frantic about, like, the kids couldn't have the Chromebook for 15 minutes. I mean, it wasn't a tremendous amount of time. It wasn't hours. We're talking 15 minutes just of silence, sitting there just to be still for 15 minutes. Just couldn't do it. So maybe, I mean, certainly maybe you're onto something.
Yeah, I really do believe that that is part of it. I mean, there's lots of other things, of course, the social unrest, the climate in which we're living in, the politics, and so forth. I think that also has led us to be a little less connected in a human form, because there's so much unrest in our daily lives. But I do think that it all started when we started using the computers more and did less of the, connection human to human.
So what can we do if we know that? Because we are seeing some crazy behaviors. Any teacher will tell you we're seeing outlandish behaviors we've never seen before, that we need your de-escalation strategies for, like in an immediate kind of way.
Sure. So there's, just a few things that you need to really think about when you're thinking of de-escalating. And, de-escalation is just a fancy term and meaning just bringing it down a notch. So one of the things that I tell teachers all the time is you need to know your kids. You need to know if they're having an off day, but you also need to know your kids so that you can help them bring it down a little bit. That's called co-regulation. And so if they know you, they trust you, you know them, you trust them, they're more than likely going to highly recommend all teachers listening to just look up some information on co-regulation. And then there's, just some other things that you need to remember. Try not to argue or reason with someone who's escalated. Think about it in your own relationship. If my husband and I both are escalated in our opinions, the last thing he wants to hear from me is reasoning. And I can assure you the last thing I want to hear from him is his reasoning. So avoid making demands. Don't yell to be heard, because sometimes when a child or an adult is beginning to escalate, the first thing that we want to do is, of course, reason with them, and they're not listening. So we elevate our voices so we can be heard. And none of that is positive. Also, you want to validate their feeling, but not necessarily their actions. When someone feels heard, and we all escalate because of emotion, but when we feel heard, we're less likely to continue with the escalation. Personal way when someone gets angry and becomes physical. So give them their personal space. And also, let's just remember, no one likes to feel like they're being caged or that they're being encroached upon. And then, give your student time to calm down. A lot of times ignoring the behavior and then coming back to talk to them at a later date is best. Try to stay on their level. Don't stand over them, because it just feels like you're being an authoritarian. Use lots of that reflective listening. I hear you say, I see you feel, or just repeat. They say, be mad. Just repeat to them, I use, those feelings. And then what I always try to do when I come into an escalated situation is I start taking deep breaths. And again, that's that co-regulation, that you want the person who's escalated to take some deep breaths, because we all know breathing deeply can definitely help to calm the nervous system, help to diminish, anger, frustration, stress. And then the last thing is make sure that you restore the relationship after the situation has happened. Let the student know that you're not being judgmental. Go back and let them know, hey, today was a really hard day for you. I'm so glad that we could escalate or de-escalate together. I appreciate you trusting me. That goes so far with students, just so that they know you're not going to hold it against them, because every day is a new day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And those strategies don't sound too hard to do. They don't sound complicated. It doesn't sound like I have to study for a long time. Sounds like something I could walk into a situation, especially if I had previous relationship with the children, and I could just kind of take those out of my back pocket, which I love.
Yes. And, you don't have to be a psychologist, an LPC, or be a school counselor to be able to utilize these strategies. As you said, these are just things that all of us really enjoy when we become upset. I really enjoy when someone says to me, I hear what you're saying. I see you're upset. Or they start taking a deep breath to remind me to take a deep breath. That makes me feel very heard, and it makes me feel appreciated. So anyone can enjoy this. You can use these strategies in your personal life with an angry parent or an escalated student.
Awesome. So you talked at the beginning about, this level of disconnect, and I wonder what we can do to, I don't know about to foster it, maybe to recreate it. I mean, we talk about this new normal. We can't get back to the way things used to be. I mean, the cat's out of the bag with Zoom and Google Classroom. It is what it is. But I just wonder, is there a way to get back to a better functioning situation, a better functioning framework? And here's even one. I was talking to someone recently, and they were saying how in their school, there's not a lot of technology at their school. They don't have the kind of money and resources that other schools have. And and he was kind of looking at me like, well, but I'm not sure that's necessarily a bad thing, because I got the kids up moving around in the classroom, and I've got the kids doing this, and I've got the students doing that. And I thought, you may not be wrong. You may not really be at a disadvantage. It may be that you have some odd advantage.
Right. And, I am not saying or advocating that we take Chromebooks out of the classroom, or that we don't use Google Classroom or Canvas or other LMS platforms. What I'm saying is that we probably need to limit that and remember that we have young, impressionistic minds that are behind the screen. So we really want to make sure that, or in front of the screen, sorry. We really want to make sure that our students are looking at appropriate material and having appropriate times on the computer. And there's lots of literature out there about the appropriate amount of time a child should be in front of a screen. But, I would be remiss, Sarah, if we didn't talk a little bit about ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Because I do believe that I do believe that our children are being exposed to a massive amount of trauma, either through the computer or their home life, or, other things that go on in their lives. And there's three basic units of ACEs. There's abuse, there's neglect, and then there's household dysfunction. And so our students are being exposed, especially I think through COVID, we realized our children are being exposed to massive amounts of trauma. And it could be the news that they're watching on TV, not just on the computer, or the conversations that they're hearing in their home where there's maybe some dysfunction going on. Now, as far as mitigating that, I think as educators, now we cannot go into the homes and we can't fix the trauma. We can't take the Chromebook away or their phones away. They're going to be exposed to all of that. But as teachers, as educators, as administrators, things that we can do is teach the 5 components of SEL. And the best way to teach those 5 components, and I'll come back to those in just a little bit, is through the advisory program. To have an advisory program at the beginning or the end of the day, maybe in the middle of the day, but I love it at the beginning of the day because it kind of sets us off, or sets our day, sets our tone. And we're teaching self-management, self-awareness, responsible decision making, and that's a huge one, my favorite one. Relationship building and social awareness. If we really take time as educators and as just adults in the lives of our children, and we teach these 5 components of SEL, I think that our children will have some basic knowledge to pull from when they are getting escalated, when they are exposed to trauma. At least they'll have some tools in their back pocket, so that they can be successful in life.
Yeah, awesome. So can you walk us through what are the 5 SEL parts that we need to be, because SEL, we throw that term around a lot. And
Yes.
so then you have everybody who responds in a myriad of ways. So everything from I already do that, you don't need to remind me, all the way to I don't do it, I never address anybody's SEL needs. I'm completely inadequate, I don't know what I'm going to do, and then everything in between. And so walk us through that. What needs to be in an advisory program? Because I think that's a very valuable conversation.
Well, I first of all want to say every teacher listening to this podcast today is helping to build those 5 components of SEL. So put those worries to bed. So the 5 components, the number 1 is self-awareness. And that's where someone can recognize their own emotions and their values, as well as their strengths and their challenges. So if I'm self-aware, I know my own emotions, I know my own strengths, as well as I know my challenges. Just think how much better off we would all be if we had, our self-awareness where it needs to be. The second component is responsible decision making. And that's where everyone makes ethical and constructive choices about their personal and social behavior. So making really good decisions and knowing that there's going to be consequences for every decision that we make. That's why that one's my favorite, because when I was a school counselor, a teacher, and especially as an administrator, I would always say to children, make good choices, because your choices have consequences. The third component is relationship skills, and that's forming those positive relationships, being able to work in a team, dealing effectively with conflict. And that very much is in that South Carolina profile of a high school graduate. We see a lot of relationship skills that are embedded in those world-class knowledge skills. And our fourth skill is social awareness, showing and understanding empathy for others. So if I see someone in the hallway spills their pencils or their pencil box or whatever, that I empathize with that feeling. So then I sympathize and I stop to help them pick it up. And then the fifth one is self-management, and that's being able to manage those emotions and behaviors to achieve our goal. If we don't have self-management, we cannot be successful in life. And so if we teach each of those 5 components in our advisory program, whatever platform you choose, whether it be Second Steps or EverFi or any others that may be out there, Ripple Effects, there's lots of really good platforms. If you really take the time to teach those 5 components, and then when students are having difficulty, being able to go back and say, are you using your best social awareness skills right now? Are you building good relationships? Are you making responsible decisions? Are you managing your own self, your own emotions? If we could go back and say that to our students and remind them, because that's what learning is all about, making mistakes and fixing it and correcting it. That's what we do as teachers every single day. So that's why I think that we should be teaching those 5 components in our advisory courses.
Yes. Like I want to yell out amen, from the sidelines over here. Okay, so actually our time together is almost done, but I get to ask my favoriteest question of all. So you get to make one recommendation, book, song, podcast, TV show, that our membership just would be crazy to miss out on. What's your recommendation?
My favorite book, It Didn't Start With You. And it's all about generational trauma and how generational trauma affects us as adults, but also our own behavior and how we are around the children in our lives, whether we're teaching them or we're raising them as our personal children. It is just it's a game changer. It was a book that I read several years ago, and just recently rediscovered it, and I use it every day in my practice. And I share it often with teachers and parents, especially students who are in therapy. I share it with their parents so that we all know how to stop generational trauma, so that the next generation can be a little more socially and emotionally stable than the last generation. Final thought is each of you are doing a wonderful job, and you need to remember that you are playing a very vital part in every child's life. I've had lots of students come back to me years later. They're doctors, lawyers, teachers. I have one student that is a senator now, but they all come back and say, it's all about the relationship that you built with me. That's why I remember you. So build those relationships, especially with that student that is the hardest to love. Build the relationship with them because they need you so much more than any other child in your classroom.